Welcome back. Today is March 31st, 2024, and that is Easter Sunday where I'm at. And Pascha is a big deal, the resurrection, the story, especially if you believe in this type of a story. And there are all kinds of stories that we tell one another. But today I want to tell you a story about my fitness journey and how it's been impacted by continuing to accept things that maybe I didn't deserve. And let me put that into context. What I mean is that I've lived, 47 years of time. And that's an admirable amount to be able to do that and still be able to continue to try and challenge myself, doing something new. Let me try to accomplish my first pull-up. Let me solve the Rubik's Cube. Let me bring my family back together for this type of a beautiful day. And in setting those type of objectives, those types of challenges, some of the disappointments that we can continue to accept include faults that are not our own. And so what do I mean by this? On this day, I'd like to put it into two ways. Like Jesus was carrying his cross. This subject is relevant. It's relevant because we're talking about Easter. And whether you believe it or not, it's not a big deal. I can't judge, The story, though, is that he was carrying his cross and someone helped, right, along the way, if I'm not mistaken. But if I am, wouldn't it be nice if somebody helped someone to bear a cross along the way if they were in a time of suffering, And that can be put into a more relevant light by just taking our own daily lives and thinking, what do I struggle with? Do I struggle with paying off credit card debt? Do I struggle with shedding those excess pounds? What do I struggle with? Do I struggle with being nice to one another? And we got to think about these things, and then we start looking into those directions. And the directions are something that can sometimes spark fear. And we know this because that's why many people go to a therapist to voice their innermost, darkest thoughts and concerns. And we also know that a therapist is, in a lot of ways, the same as talking with one of your best friends, one of your most closest relatives, coworkers, acquaintances, people who you can actually talk with. And the varying degrees of how someone would care about what you're saying will depend on what these people are, maybe not even as you know them. So, like, for an example, for some of you out there, your own mother might try to take your wealth, your overall wealth that was due to you. And I don't mean due to you like from an entitlement type way. What I mean is I'm relating a story from my own experience. My father recently, in his 70s, used methamphetamines, and he pretty much went crazy and set fire to his house. And in so doing, a lot of unusual, convoluted things occurred. But the fact of the matter is, I'm an only child who my grandmother always would tell me, "Mijo, this is going to be yours. This house is yours. Mijo, this house is yours." And although I'm not here to just take over some kind of property that doesn't belong to me, I've been told this is yours. And here in this country, we've been told freedom, you have freedom. This is yours. But as we have conversations back and forth with one another, whether it be with friends, family members, associates, acquaintances, in many cases, the spirit of error will reveal itself because it'll continue adding details to a story about things that don't matter. Like, have you ever talked with a friend and you told them all of these amazing things that were going on in your life? You're trying to do this, you're trying to do that, you're achieving this, you're accomplishing this, and they don't reflect any of that back, saying, In other words, they don't acknowledge you, but then they do tell you about a lot of things that are going on in their life, and you remember what's going on in their life. Like if their mother was, like for an example, trying to take away their wealth, like take away their home in a situation such as like what I've described has happened to me in real life. These are details that a best friend would remember. And an acquaintance or someone who's just not even in it for anything other than pay in some cases may not pay attention to the details, because the details don't matter. Because the person with whom they are conversing, that's the relationship level. It's someone we're meeting in passing in our memory. We don't want to dedicate too much time to it. That's how we typically have operated because of the teachings of our fathers. Now, I've had great coworkers who are way more than acquaintances to me, who have heard everything that I'm saying, remembered all those details, and they became like family with me. They offered to help during my most challenging times. During my challenging times on my path, on my journey, during my challenging times, many people have opted in to help and to, at least, if nothing else, hear what the other person had to say objectively, so that we could try to figure out, well, there might be a solution. There probably is a solution. The difficulty of the solution is directly proportionate to how much fear we experience when it comes to communicating with one another. So today, on this day, Easter, I've wished my direct relatives a happy Easter, genuinely. And I haven't heard anything back in regards to that, but it's possible it's because these individuals don't believe in that type of celebration, like as if you were to say Happy New Year to someone. If you were to not believe it was going to be a Happy New Year, you might harumph one another in return. We might not greet each other and bless each other along the way. We might curse this person, foiled again, but in an angry, egocentric way. This training has been the most difficult training to understand, because to talk about it requires an assimilation of knowledge, of a duality that exists within everybody. And to acknowledge the self is probably the most compassionate things that we can, one of the most compassionate things that we can do, next to acknowledging the direct reflection that we look at in the mirror when we talk with one another. So whether you like the videos that I produce or not, that's almost irrelevant. You know, it's almost like suddenly asking me out of the blue while we're talking right now if I know who this picture is of. And it's a picture of someone that has nothing to do theoretically with anything we're talking about. It has everything to do with what we're talking about, because it provides us with a conversational opportunity. And in those conversational opportunities, if we're finding ourselves getting angry with one another, we might need to slow down and try to understand the other person's point of view if we are the person who's becoming angry. If we're not angry and we're still able to move forward and to do things that are productive and to smile with one another, to try and do our best to bring our A game to all of the rest of our friends and family, then I think we've succeeded and we've put in a good day's work. And because we've put in a good day's work, we're going to sleep better. So for the first and foremost thing that I've got to emphasize that was really troubling me in the beginning of this training phase was to get some proper sleep. And the more that I'm able to live my truth, which has set me free, the more that I'm able to sleep better. That doesn't mean that there's not some ongoing, constant things that I have forgotten to unsubscribe from. And so to get back to the fundamental of what I did to start to regain my health in other words, to eliminate my sleepless nights and the constant headaches that were occurring, was to begin to just point out some truth among the people with whom I was having conversations. And as I would allow for the spirit of truth to occur, that naturally would eliminate the spirit of confusion. And so, in a way, the hardest thing to following this journey, understanding all of this, and then following through, is to recognize that we are going to have to give up certain connections in order to advance in any direction if we find ourselves stagnant. And if we find ourselves growing ill without any, without very much logic as to why it's occurring all the time, it's possible that we're going through something that is almost spiritual and worth considering if we're considering balancing our health on a tripod of mental, physical, and spiritual well-being. So speaking of tripods, I've set up the tripod here so that I could talk without trying to, keep the frame aligned as nicely as I would like to for my viewers. And so anyway, I'm just relating things together. We're using a tripod to talk about a tripod of regaining our health, and how some of us might be putting in the effort physically, maybe even mentally, but spiritually, once that's eroded, then physical and mental will erode just as rapidly. And so that's the I don't want to call it the death process, but that's the aging process. And the aging process is and can be very exponentially great when our heart is burdened with things that we can't find ways to say to and with one another. So that's why I started my channel way back when. There are some communication obstacles that I've been faced with in my areas of conversation. And for whatever reason, I constantly find myself pointing one conversation to 3 conversations so that we can have a tripod, a balance of observations going on in the group, so that we can find out where the weakest links are, if there are any. If there aren't, all we're doing is resonating at more and more positive levels, because they'll say steel sharpens steel. Well, kindness resonates kindness. Compassion definitely is in fashion. And so I know that makes sense. And I know that this is the right day for someone to be watching this. And I know that people are, again, we're all listening to one another. So the only thing we can do is try to wish each other well, especially where we see people that are struggling. And that's why in the description for many of the last videos here, I put a comment in there and included an address in there to which money could be sent. My dad really did burn down his house, and he's living in a trailer, which I have not seen. And I haven't seen it because some of the conversational difficulties that we continue to experience are such that in many cases, as I'm sure you're experiencing, in many cases, the person with whom I'm trying to have a conversation, they can respond in a way that is unusual. I made a song about it, and it starts out, I try to tell you how I feel, and your response to me is unreal. And do you hear me? Anyway, that's the name of the song. So maybe I'll link to that, or maybe that'll be my mission, is to really make that video, to really make that song, because it's a good song. I know it's a good song because I came up with it. It came from my heart. It's a true story, and I know that it's relatable. So if I can make a good song and put that out there for my next video, and if you can click on the description and find in your abilities the at least the consideration of sharing with one another, even if it's not for the purpose that you read about there, that just might be the answer to someone else's problem that solves a situation that was taking up so much time that this person couldn't rectify, what was going on. They were too distracted to be able to find out what their passion was, what they could do to bring other people happiness and joy. And so that in turn dims the light for countless exponential sections of positivity that could exist if only we knew how to better communicate. Should take some tips lightly from anywhere that you happen to find them. Inhale, exhale. You've got to relax, work out, find your counterparts that really enjoy what it is that there is to enjoy, and always remember the devil's in the details. And it's all around. The fact is that there is duality, and whether we treat each other nice or not is probably the paramount thing to learn out of something like an opportunity to have the freedom to celebrate a nationally recognized time frame, whether or not we enjoy the chocolates. So I hope that makes sense. Until next time, peace, love, and all that old school stuff.